Commander David sat rigid in the dimly lit operations room, the hum of overhead fluorescent lights mixing with the faint buzz of computers and encrypted radios. The walls were lined with maps, satellite imagery, and digital displays flickering coordinates in real time. The air smelled faintly of coffee and electronics, a sterile scent familiar to those who had spent countless hours planning missions from bases far from home. Around him, the team of SEALs leaned over tables, studying blueprints, taking notes, whispering last-minute questions to the officers in charge. Every face in the room carried the same tension. This wasn't a routine operation, and every operative knew it. The briefing officer, a stern Navy intelligence officer, stepped forward, sliding a laser pointer across the map. "Target is located in Sector Delta," she began, her voice clipped, professional, betraying none of the urgency that simmered beneath the surface. "Heavily armed, fortified positions, unknown number of hostiles. Our intel indicates hostile snipers stationed at high elevations. Most notably, there's one operative, estimated altitude, 3,247 meters, whose efficiency has been unmatched. Any engagement without neutralizing that sniper could cost lives." Eyes followed the red dot moving across the digital terrain, tracing steep cliffs, jagged ridges, and deep ravines. He had studied these mountains for weeks, memorized every elevation, every potential ambush point. The altitude alone was dangerous. Thin air made breathing shallow, reduced reaction times, and amplified mistakes. But what made him pause wasn't the terrain or the target, it was the mention of the sniper. The description triggered a memory he had tried hard to suppress. Months ago, on a mission he would never forget, a shadowy sniper had saved his team from certain death. She had been precise, calm, and almost preternaturally patient, disappearing before anyone could identify her. No one knew her identity, and when the operation ended, she vanished, leaving only whispers and awe behind. He had assumed she had been killed, captured, or disappeared for good. And now the mission briefing mentioned her, or someone remarkably like her. Leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking beneath him. His fingers drummed lightly against the map. The tension in the room was palpable. He could feel it in the slight stiffness of the men and women around him, the subtle glances toward him as if silently asking, what will happen next? He had trained them well, every man and woman was elite, but this mission was different. The unknown variable, the sniper, could change everything. The officer continued, detailing the insertion plan. Helicopters would drop the team at dawn under the cover of early light, followed by a coordinated approach along multiple. Every movement would be calculated, every second critical. The mission's objective was clear: secure the high-value target with minimal exposure, but couldn't shake the image of the sniper, perched somewhere high above, watching, waiting, a silent judge of their every action. He shifted his gaze to the faces of his team, young and seasoned alike, all of them relying on his command, trusting his judgment. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him like a physical force. Years of operations, years of life-and-death decisions, hadn't prepared him for the emotion that surfaced at the mere thought of seeing her again. Questions raced through his mind. How had she survived? Was she still loyal to the same cause they served? Could he rely on her without knowing her intentions? The briefing officer's voice cut through his thoughts. "Question," she asked. The room remained silent. Opened his mouth, hesitated, then closed it. The question he wanted to ask, is she alive, felt too dangerous, too personal, too vulnerable in a room full of warriors. He had to focus on the mission, on the men and women depending on him. But deep in the pit of his stomach, he felt a stirring of anticipation, a spark of hope he hadn't dared entertain for months. As the lights flickered on the maps, showing detailed and enemy positions, allowed himself a single thought. Survival depended on control, precision, and awareness. And yet, beneath it all, an unshakable certainty took root. When they finally met this sniper face to face, nothing would ever be the same. The room grew quiet again, the only sound the faint tapping of keyboards and low hum of ventilation. Stared at the map, tracing a potential path through the mountains, knowing that every decision he made in the next hours would mean life or death. Somewhere above them, 3,247 meters in the thin, biting air, a shadow waited. And he knew, with every instinct honed by years of combat, that the shadow was no ordinary sniper. Dawn had not yet broken when Commander David climbed aboard the transport helicopter with his team. The rotors churned the cold morning air into a furious wind that whipped through the mountainside below. The smell of fuel mixed with sweat and leather from their gear, familiar yet oddly grounding. Every operative moved with quiet precision, checking weapons, securing harnesses, and running final mental checks. Eyes flicked across the team, noting each member's focus. They were elite, hand-picked for missions like this, but even the best could falter in the face of the unknown. The mountains stretched below them, jagged and unforgiving, shrouded in thin morning mist. Peaks stabbed the sky like stone sentinels, and valleys gaped wide, hiding shadows that might conceal danger. The target was entrenched deep in this hostile terrain, and somewhere above, perched at 3,247 meters, a sniper could observe their every move. Chest tightened at the thought. He had spent nights memorizing every elevation, every ridge line, but knowing the geography didn't eliminate the human variable. An enemy capable of shooting with deadly precision from such impossible heights. The helicopter hummed steadily, maintaining a low altitude to avoid radar detection. Watched through the tinted window as the team's insertion point approached, a narrow plateau halfway up the mountainside, barely wide enough to accommodate the aircraft. The pilot's hands were steady, eyes focused, but could feel the tension in the cabin like static electricity. One miscalculation, one misjudged gust of wind, and the mission, and everyone aboard, could be lost. As the chopper descended, mind wandered back to the briefing. The sniper. That name, that shadowy presence in his memory made his pulse quicken. Could it really be her? Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hawk, the woman who had vanished months ago during a previous operation, whose precision and calm under fire had saved his life and the lives of his team. He had assumed she was dead, lost forever behind enemy lines. And now, intelligence suggested she might be the very same operative waiting above them, invisible, deadly, untouchable. The helicopter hovered over the plateau, rotors slicing the thin mountain air, glanced at the team, giving subtle hand signals. No words were necessary, training took over. Ropes were lowered, boots strapped into harnesses, and one by one the operators descended into the mist below, landing silently despite the gusting wind. Was last to exit, his heart hammering, not from fear but anticipation. He scanned the tree line, every shadow, every ridge, knowing someone or something was watching. Once on the ground, the team spread out, moving in disciplined formations, eyes scanning, rifles ready. Led the way, careful to maintain cover while assessing the terrain. The silence of the mountains was deceptive. Every crunch of gravel underfoot, every snap of a branch could alert hidden observers. And somewhere above, he knew, a sniper could see every movement, calculating wind speed, distance, and trajectory with terrifying accuracy. A sudden flash of movement caught eye, too deliberate to be a stray animal, too controlled to be random. His stomach tightened. Could it really be her? The sniper's presence was palpable, an invisible hand guiding the unfolding mission. He forced himself to focus, reminding himself that hesitation could be deadly. The team relied on him to move forward, to execute the plan flawlessly. The plateau gave way to a narrow path winding around cliffs and jagged rock formations. The altitude made every step heavier, each breath shallower. Adjusted his gear, signaling the team to maintain a slow, steady pace. Ahead, the target area loomed like a fortress. Enemy patrols moved methodically, unaware that elite operators were threading through the mountains toward them. And then a single shot rang out, not aimed at them but precise, controlled, perfect. A patrol collapsed silently, neutralized before they could react. Froze, chest tightening, pulse racing. That shot, he knew the cadence, the calmness behind it. A ghost from the past had made herself known, and the mission had just become personal. Somewhere above, 3,247 meters in the thin, cold air, a shadow waited, felt it deep in his gut. The sniper wasn't just watching, they were watching him. The air on the mountainside was thin and biting, each breath a reminder of the altitude. Commander David crouched behind a jagged boulder, scanning the ridges above and the valley below. The SEAL team moved in perfect formation, silent and efficient, rifles raised, eyes sharp. Every detail mattered. Every shift in the mist, every shadow on the rock face could be fatal. Had trained for countless scenarios, but nothing prepared him for the sudden, unmistakable precision of what came next. A shot rang out, piercing the morning silence. It was not frantic, not desperate. It was controlled, deliberate, surgical. An enemy scout had fallen before they could even react. Head snapped up, eyes narrowing. The timing, the precision, the calm certainty behind the shot, it was unmistakable. His heart thumped hard against his chest. He knew this style, this rhythm. It belonged to someone he had long believed lost. The sniper moved with methodical grace, emerging briefly from the jagged ridge above. Froze, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. She was real. She was alive. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hawk, ghost, legend, phantom of past operations, sat perched on a rocky outcrop, .50 in hand, cleaning it with unshakable calm. The sunlight glinted off her scope, her face hidden beneath a tactical mask, yet her presence was undeniable. Every movement was precise, every gesture deliberate. She radiated control, confidence, and lethal skill. Time seemed to slow. The SEAL team, unaware of recognition, continued their advance, trusting his leadership, but could not move. His fingers twitched near his sidearm, though he had no intention of drawing it. The sniper Hawk was here, alive and unbound. For a heartbeat, he was paralyzed, caught between disbelief and awe. She had been missing for months, presumed lost behind enemy lines, and now she watched them, her gaze calculating, unblinking. Memories surged forward. The last mission, the ambush, the way she had saved his life and the lives of others, disappearing into the shadows before anyone could identify her. He had wondered every night if she had survived, if she had been captured, if she was even alive. And now, there she was, calm, collected, untouchable, a living ghost on the mountain. Her movements were mesmerizing. She lifted a lens cloth, polished the scope, checked the barrel, and reassembled her weapon with mechanical precision. Each motion was deliberate, controlled, and frighteningly efficient. She didn't flinch at the sight of them. She didn't hesitate. It was as though the mountain itself obeyed her will. Felt a shiver run down his spine. This was more than skill. It was artistry, patience honed to perfection. The distance between them felt insignificant and infinite all at once. Wanted to call out, to bridge the months of unanswered questions, but he knew any sound could compromise the mission. The sniper's eyes, hidden beneath her tactical mask, seemed to pierce through him. It was recognition without words, a shared history, a silent acknowledgement that she remembered him, that she remembered the team, that she had returned on her own terms. A subtle signal, a tilt of her head, a small nod confirmed what it suspected. She was aligned with them, at least for now. The moment was fleeting but powerful. It reminded him why they survived missions: trust, timing, and the people who could change the balance of life and death with a single action. Exhaled slowly, regaining composure. He motioned the team forward, careful to stay under cover, every step calculated. The sniper's presence, once alarming, was now a silent reassurance. She was watching, she was protecting. And as the team advanced into the treacherous mountain pass, realized one truth: the mission had just changed. What had started as a standard operation had become a reunion, a reckoning, and a deadly dance with a ghost he had long believed lost. Somewhere high above, at 3,247 meters, she waited. And David, for the first time in months, felt hope mingle with the fear. The rare, dangerous kind of hope that only a living legend could inspire. Commander David, eyes locked on the sniper perched high above the valley, and time seemed to stretch. Every detail became crystal clear. The measured way she adjusted her grip on the .50, the calm precision as she cleaned it, the subtle tilt of her head as if acknowledging his presence. Recognition hit him like a physical blow. It was her, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hawk. The woman he had thought dead, the teammate he had relied on countless times, the ghost who had vanished behind enemy lines months ago, alive, and more formidable than he could have imagined. Pulse raced, every memory of their shared missions flooded back. He remembered the firelight of their last operation, the chaos, the panic, and her unwavering calm. He remembered how she had covered their retreat with surgical precision, neutralizing threats they hadn't even noticed. She had sacrificed her cover to save him and the team, disappearing into enemy territory so they could survive. For months, he had replayed that day in his mind, haunted by the possibility that she had not survived. And now there she was, watching him, her presence commanding, her skills unshaken by time or solitude. The SEAL team moved below, unaware of the internal storm raging in their commander, motioned subtly for silence and continued to study her. Her eyes, partially visible beneath her tactical mask, were calm, calculating, and intense. She had survived the impossible, enduring isolation, hostile territory, and months of uncertainty. That level of resilience was almost beyond comprehension. Felt a surge of respect, awe, and relief, all mingled with disbelief. How had she managed this? How had she remained undetected, untouchable, and yet still present to protect them? For a long moment they simply observed each other across the rocky expanse. No words were spoken, no signals exchanged, yet the communication was profound. Her small nod, almost imperceptible, was enough to confirm alignment without compromising the mission. Heart swelled with cautious hope. She was here to help. She had chosen to return, to intervene at the most critical moment. And in that choice, she reminded him why he trusted her implicitly. Thoughts drifted to the months of unanswered questions. He remembered every detail of her disappearance, the silence that followed, the futile searches, the nightly doubts. He remembered the pain of assuming she was gone, the empty void left in the wake of her absence. And now, seeing her alive, poised above them, he realized how foolish those doubts had been. She had endured more than anyone could imagine, surviving with patience, cunning, and skill honed to perfection. She was a living testament to what it meant to be a SEAL, a sniper, and a warrior who trusted no one but herself to survive. He forced himself to focus on the mission. The target was still in the valley, surrounded by armed guards, and every second counted. Yet beneath the tactical awareness, a personal recognition lingered. This was no ordinary sniper. This was the teammate who had saved his life, who had vanished into the unknown, who now returned not as a shadow but as a force to be reckoned with. Felt a mix of relief, admiration, and an unspoken question. Why now? Why reappear at this moment? The wind whipped around the mountain, rattling loose gravel and carrying the faint scent of snow. Adjusted her scope with calm precision, seemingly unaffected by the thin air or the treacherous altitude. She was completely in control, a stark contrast to the chaos below. Allowed himself a small exhale, silently acknowledging her presence as both reassurance and warning. She was here, she was lethal, and she was watching, not just the enemy but him. Realized that the next moments would define everything. The mission, the team's survival, and the reunion of two warriors who had once shared life-and-death experiences hinged on trust and precision. He couldn't allow surprise, hesitation, or distraction to jeopardize the operation. And yet, as he glanced at her shadowed figure above, he felt a rare sense of hope. Against all odds, she had returned. Against all danger, she was still Hawk. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that the impossible task of surviving her absence had prepared them both for what was coming next. The mountains were silent again, but tension hung thick in the air. Gave a subtle hand signal to the team to advance cautiously, every movement deliberate, every step measured. The sniper above, silent and vigilant, became the unseen anchor in the storm, and for the first time in months felt certain of one thing. She wasn't just alive, she was back, and nothing would ever be the same. Commander David crouched behind a jagged boulder, but his mind was elsewhere. The mountains stretched endlessly below, shrouded in mist, the sniper above waiting silently. His eyes, however, drifted backward to a memory that had haunted him for months, the mission that had changed everything. It had been months ago, deep in hostile territory, a mission that seemed routine on paper but had turned into a nightmare the moment their team had been ambushed. Enemy forces had them pinned in a narrow canyon, heavy gunfire echoing off the walls. Chaos reigned, bullets ricocheting, debris scattering. Had barked orders, but the situation had been spiraling too fast for conventional command to matter. Every second counted, and lives were balanced on a knife's edge. Amidst the storm of gunfire and smoke, had emerged as the calm center. She had positioned herself atop a ridge, her .50 gleaming in the sunlight, scanning the valley below with unparalleled focus. One shot after another, she had neutralized threats with surgical precision, providing the cover team desperately needed to maneuver. He remembered the awe mixed with fear as he watched her work, calm, unflinching, almost inhuman in her control. Each pull of the trigger was a statement. Survival depended on trust, and she demanded it. Then the moment that changed everything. Enemy reinforcements poured in, cutting off their exit. Had given a quick hand signal, the only wordless communication she had ever needed. She would cover their retreat. Had protested, his voice lost amidst the gunfire, but she had simply nodded, eyes locked with his in a brief, unbreakable promise. Go, survive, live. They had scrambled through the canyon, hearts pounding, lungs burning, leaving behind. The last thing he remembered was her silhouette against the rising smoke, a shadow merging with the rocks, the raised, her calm a stark contrast to the chaos surrounding her. And then she was gone. The team had searched, called for extraction, but she was nowhere to be found. Rumors spread, captured, killed, vanished. Had refused to accept it, yet the silence gnawed at him, filling every quiet moment with guilt and doubt. Back on base, reports trickled in unconfirmed, whispers of a lone sniper operating in distant regions. Every intel update was a dagger to his chest. He had spent nights replaying that mission, trying to rationalize her disappearance, replaying her last moments, wishing he could have done more, fearing he never would. She had saved their lives, yet had vanished without a trace. Now high in the mountains once more, saw her again. The memories collided with reality, a rush of relief, shock, and admiration. She was alive. She had endured months in hostile territory alone, surviving with nothing but her wits, training, and the lethal precision that had always defined her. The sniper perched above them, calmly cleaning her .50, was the same hawk who had once saved his life, yet had grown stronger, more deliberate, more untouchable. His thoughts returned to the present as a cool wind swept across the ridge. The team moved carefully below, oblivious to the storm of memories flooding their commander. Allowed himself a small, silent acknowledgement. She had returned, not just as a memory, but as a force ready to act. And in that acknowledgement lay a mix of relief and fear. Relief that she was alive, fear for what awaited them if the enemy realized she was here. His presence reminded him of everything he had almost lost, the trust, the skill, the rare clarity of a teammate who could command death and survival in a single breath. She had sacrificed herself for them, endured the impossible, and now returned, choosing the moment and the stakes herself. Realized that whatever happened next, he could rely on her, not just as a sniper, but as a partner in the deadly dance of life and death that only a few had the skill, courage, and heart to survive. As he glanced at the shadow above, allowed himself one final thought before focusing on the mission. Survival had a face, and it was Hawk's. She had returned, and now, the past and present converged with lethal precision. The mountains were alive with tension, each gust of wind carrying the faint scent of snow and earth. Commander David led his team cautiously along a narrow ridge, eyes scanning the treacherous terrain, every step measured. Below, enemy patrols moved methodically, unaware that elite SEALs were threading silently through the jagged paths toward their fortified position. But the real edge, the invisible advantage, hovered high above, 3,247 meters in the thin air, a shadow watching, calculating, lethal. Pulse steadied as he glanced upward. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hawk had assumed her position on a rocky outcrop, her .50 resting calmly across her lap. She surveyed the valley like a predator, measuring wind speed, angle, and distance with clinical precision. Every shot she took would dictate the team's path. Every movement she made was a signal, though unspoken. Felt the familiar surge of confidence that came from trusting her instincts, knowing she had survived the impossible to guide them now. The first opportunity presented itself as a lone enemy sentry emerged from the shadows, packing near a supply cache. Raised her rifle, the scope moving smoothly to track the target. Counted silently in his head. 1, 2, 3, the shot rang out and the patrol collapsed soundlessly. The SEALs advanced, slipping along the rocks, every step synchronized with her coverage. The sniper's presence was not just support. It was an extension of the team's senses, eyes and precision elevated to near superhuman levels. Communicated through subtle hand signals, allowing the team to advance while minimizing noise. The wind howled through the canyon, but the adjustments were flawless. A second enemy group approached the ridge below. She paused, calculated the trajectory, and neutralized them before they could react. The SEALs barely flinched at the sound of the distant, muffled gunfire. Each shot a signal that the path was clear. Felt a mix of awe and relief. She had returned not only alive but entirely indispensable. Every movement became a dance of precision and trust. The SEAL team moved like shadows, climbing, crouching, and slipping through cover while the sniper ensured no threat could intervene. Allowed himself a moment to observe her methodical calm, the way she adjusted her scope, cleaned her barrel, and checked her position without hesitation. She was not just watching, she was orchestrating, controlling the battlefield from above with perfect timing. The mission stakes escalated as they neared the high-value target's location. Enemy guards were heavily armed, some stationed in fortified bunkers, signaled a halt, assessing the path and calculating the timing with presence in mind. A single misstep could alert the entire compound. But the sniper above, calm and patient, created a window of opportunity, neutralizing threats silently and allowing the team to close the distance. Every shot was deliberate, every breath synchronized with the team's movement. Time slowed as they approached the final stretch. Could feel the tension radiating through the team, muscles tight, eyes sharp. Hawk's shadow above was a silent promise. She had their backs. The SEALs moved in formation, silent, lethal, guided by instinct and training. Calculated precision eliminated the final patrol silently, clearing the path. Felt a surge of admiration and relief, not just for her skill, but for her unwavering focus, her calm under pressure, her return after months of uncertainty. As the team reached the target compound, glanced up once more. Hawk's presence, perched high above in near-impossible terrain, remained a constant, invisible force. She had become more than a sniper. She was a guardian, a conductor of chaos, a force shaping every move. Knew that whatever lay ahead, the mission now had an edge no one could contest. Survival, precision, and trust had converged, and in that moment the SEALs moved forward with lethal confidence, guided by the shadow of the sniper who had once vanished, and now returned. The valley below was alive with movement, the enemy unaware that the SEAL team had infiltrated their stronghold. Commander David signaled a halt behind a jagged boulder, the muscles in his body taut with anticipation. The high-value target's compound loomed ahead, guarded by a perimeter of armed men. Every second counted, every misstep could be fatal. And above it all, perched like a shadow on a distant ridge, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hawk observed. Her .50 cradled calmly, eyes scanning every inch of terrain. Heart pounded, not just from the danger but from the knowledge that Hawk had returned, her presence both reassurance and silent threat. She was watching, calculating, orchestrating every move below with a deadly precision that left him in awe. The sniper's presence allowed the SEALs to advance with confidence, though every step carried the weight of potential catastrophe. Motioned the team forward, their movements synchronized, silent and lethal. A sentry emerged unexpectedly from the compound's side entrance, a rifle slung loosely over his shoulder. Before he could raise an alarm, a shot cracked through the air, a single perfect controlled round. The guard fell silently and the team pressed forward, allowed himself a brief glance upward. Hawk had fired, her form steady, almost statuesque against the rugged ridge. She didn't flinch, didn't rush. Her calmness was unnerving and awe-inspiring. It reminded him of the countless times she had saved him and his team, of the skill and patience that defined her. The team navigated through the perimeter with surgical precision, each step a dance of timing and coordination. Mind was split between the mission and the silent recognition of Hawk above. The compound was heavily fortified, but the sniper's presence neutralized threats before they could respond. Enemy patrols were eliminated silently, almost invisibly. Couldn't help but marvel at her control. She was not merely a sniper. She was a guardian, a silent force shaping the battlefield from impossible heights. As they approached the target's location, spotted him for the first time, the man whose capture had been the objective of countless intelligence reports. Surrounded by guards, he appeared confident, unaware of the danger closing in. Hawk adjusted her scope, measuring wind, distance, and trajectory, signaled the team to hold position. One wrong move could trigger a firefight that would cost lives. And then Hawk fired. The shot was instantaneous and precise. The target staggered, struck without warning, and chaos erupted among the guards. The SEAL team moved in, neutralizing remaining threats with swift efficiency. Felt the surge of adrenaline and relief as the high-value target was secured. Hawk had maintained the upper hand from above, her presence turning a near-impossible operation into a meticulously executed mission. Finally, the immediate threat neutralized, signaled a temporary halt. He moved toward the ridge, climbing carefully, guided by instinct and adrenaline. Hawk had already noticed him, and for the first time they shared words. "You're alive," breathed awe and disbelief mingling in his tone. Hawk's calm eyes met his. "Still covering your back," she replied softly, her voice carrying the quiet authority he remembered. The moment was fleeting. The mission demanded attention. Yet in that brief exchange, months of doubt, worry, and unspoken questions dissolved. Realized that her survival, skill, and return were more than a gift. They were a testament to her resilience, patience, and deadly expertise. She had returned at the perfect moment, guiding them to victory with lethal precision. As the SEAL team prepared to extract the target, allowed himself one final thought before the operation concluded. Hawk had returned not only as a sniper, but as a force that no enemy could anticipate, no plan could counter, and no one could ignore. She had shaped the outcome of the mission from the shadows, and now, as he descended the ridge, he knew one truth with absolute certainty. Survival, precision, and trust had converged in her, and nothing would ever be the same. The operation was complete. The high-value target was secured, enemy forces neutralized, and the SEAL team had retreated to a safe perimeter. The sun was setting, painting the jagged peaks in shades of gold and crimson, the wind carrying the thin chill of the high-altitude air. Commander David finally allowed himself a moment to breathe, leaning against a boulder as he watched the team pack equipment and check their surroundings. The mission had been a success, but the presence that had guided them, perched above in the cold, impossible heights, lingered in his mind. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hawk moved with quiet grace, descending from her sniper position with the careful precision of someone who had lived in hostile territory for months. Heart pounded as he watched her approach. The sight of her, alive and composed, was almost surreal. Every motion she made exuded confidence and calm, the same deadly precision that had once saved his life. Yet there was a subtle weariness in her stance, a hint of the trials she had endured alone. She had survived the impossible, and now she had returned to them. The team gave her space, sensing the gravity of the reunion without speaking. Stepped forward, words caught in his throat. Months of worry, doubt, and uncertainty dissolved in an instant as their eyes met. I thought we lost you," he said, voice low, tinged with emotion he rarely allowed himself to show. Hawk's lips curved in a faint smile, calm but knowing. "I'm here. Still watching your back," she replied softly, her tone carrying the quiet authority that had always commanded respect. Allowed himself to step closer, studying her face beneath the tactical mask, noting the subtle signs of endurance. The faint lines etched by months of survival, the alertness in her eyes, the silent confidence that had never wavered. Memories of the missions they had survived together surged forward. The ambush, the retreats, the moments when life and death had hung on her decisions. She had been missing, a ghost in his memory, and now she was real again, present, alive, and more formidable than ever. The SEAL team gathered around, debriefing and securing equipment, but remained focused on her. There was an unspoken understanding. She had returned on her terms, and the trust between them was reaffirmed in silence. Words were unnecessary. Every glance, every measured movement conveyed the bond forged in life-and-death situations, tempered by absence and reinforced by survival. The mountains, silent witnesses to their reunion, seemed to hold their breath along with him. As they prepared for extraction, and Hawk walked side by side toward the helicopter. The wind swept around them, carrying the faint scent of snow and earth, a reminder of the harsh environment they had just navigated. Realized that the mission had been more than a tactical operation. It had been a test of endurance, trust, and resilience. Hawk's presence had shifted the balance, guiding them to victory with lethal precision, and in doing so, had reminded him of the rare connection shared between warriors who understand life and death in equal measure. Once aboard the helicopter, the team settled in, the rotors slicing the thin mountain air as they ascended. Finally allowed himself a moment to relax, glancing at Hawk seated across from him. Their eyes met briefly, a quiet acknowledgement passing between them. No words were needed. She had returned from the unknown, survived the impossible, and now she was here, an unshakable force and a living testament to what it meant to endure, survive, and protect. As the helicopter lifted away from the peaks, allowed himself one final thought, a quiet reflection he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Some ghosts return. Some you hope never leave your sight. And some, like Hawk, return stronger, more precise, and more untouchable than ever, shaping destiny from the shadows while guiding those who live to see another day. The mountains faded behind them, but the legend of the sniper, the reunion of teammates, and the bond forged under fire remained, indelible and eternal. Knew that whatever challenges awaited, the shadow of Hawk would always be there, watching, calculating, and ensuring that survival was never left to chance.